wines, but for the average person, how do you know a good wine, and how do you know how to pair a wine with good food?
Knowing a good wine is, it's true to you. Yeah, so in all honesty, what you like in terms of your flavor profile, your palate, is truly what you feel is a good wine. And again, at the end of the day, it's all about you, your perspective, your taste buds, and what you deem as what you're enjoying at the moment. I'm not, and nor do I think anybody should be telling somebody that you can't like this because X, Y, Z. It's not the appropriate approach to what we're doing here.
Well, that's good philosophy. So for the average wine consumer, like once you do buy that bottle of wine that you like, what are the things that they can do? What storage of it, once they open it, how, and then before they drink it, to make it a better wine tasting experience?
And it's a big topic. It's a
Well, just
we'll try to distill it down here. Every product has a preferred serving temperature. If you have a question, ask either your wine professional at your shop or your tasting room staff, which where we are in the tasting room. They will tell you, what the ideal serving temperature is for that product. Every time we make something colder, the acidity tends to stand up a little bit more, or the tannins, if you're just chilling a red wine, which is not often preferred, but sometimes people do like that. The tannins tend to stand up, so it tends to be a little bit more astringent and a little bit more dry.
So red wines are around like 64, where whites are like in the 50s?
I think 64 would even be high, personally. Okay. 55 to 65 range in there would be ideal. Whites tend to be 40 to 50. The trick is, if you're chilling a white wine, put it in the fridge, but take it out 15 minutes before you serve it. And that tends to be falling right in line with the aromatic where it's supposed to go.
And what about for red wines, aerating and decanting? Does that really change the flavor profile at all?
Yes. So anytime you add oxygen to the equation, you're basically volatilizing the aromatics. So the potential of the aroma in that wine is in the chemistry of the wine. And anytime you add oxygen to that, you're going to lift up those aromas. You're going to bring them to your nose. So the proper practice is to pour a wine, look at a wine, analyze a wine, swirl a wine, and that swirling technique helps to volatilize those aromas. So it's helping to bring oxygen in and bring them up to your nose. So then when you sniff, you're able to smell and get different characteristics from that wine. And those characteristics can be different from back here versus when your nose is deeply in the glass. So a lot of people, if they get really in deep, they get nothing but alcohol, and a lot of the aromas tend to live on the edge of that glass. So I tend to lean into it and slowly bring it through.
And then what about doing the tasting itself to get the true essence, if you will, of the wine?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So every time you analyze a wine or you're trying to break down a wine, you're looking at a number of things. So we look at color. Obviously, this is different. We look at clarity. There are a lot of cues that color and clarity can give you. Namely, in white wines, if it tends to be orange or amber, it tends to be some oxidation in the process. Obviously, we can all see bubbles. It tends to tell you whether it's sparkling or not. In a red wine, the more aged a wine gets, it tends to get in this kind of brick hue, kind of orangey around the edge, around the bowl, around the edges, of the wine. And you can kind of see that it's gotten some age on it. And then finally, inviting.
Yeah, that's it. Is there a specific procedure for the tasting itself? Like, I've heard putting it under your tongue.
Yeah, so anything, again, to bring oxygen to the equation tends to lift aromas. So the things that we taste, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. That's all we taste once we put things on the palate. Everything that you say, oh, it tastes like a strawberry, it actually smells like a strawberry. It's all retroolfactory. So it goes up through the back of the nose, and you're smelling those aromas that give you the indication that, yes, this is a strawberry. So the only taste sensation that you're having is that tactile, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. And so when we put the wine into the palate, we're looking for those things. Number one, before we get there, we're smelling, again, for the off aromas, for the enjoyment, for the aromatic potential that was built into the product, and intentionally by the winemaker and by the grape variety itself or the apple variety itself. And then once it's on the palate, we're analyzing, okay, sweetness. Everybody has a different palate at this point. It's where it goes up to your individual characteristics, and really it is down to your tongue. One of the coolest things that I learned in winemaking school was mapping out my tongue, taking a Q-tip and dipping it into malic acid, and literally putting it onto different sensory receptors on my tongue and saying, oh, this is where I taste acidity. This is where I taste sweetness. This is where I taste bitterness. This is where I taste astringency. And so if you have that, if you can do that, that's great, if you have the ability to do those things. But if you can't, as you're drinking the wine or cider, just close your eyes and think about it. Think about where you are perceiving those tactile sensations. And that can inform you as to how a product moves through your palate. And again, as I mentioned before, how that product persists and stays within your palate definitely increases the complexity and potentially the value of that product too. Because we're all looking for something that's going to give us that really ethereal experience that is so memorable. The beautiful thing about that whole retro olfactory component is that it's a direct line to your brain, and we have some sensory memory that is attached to a lot of these aromas. And so we may get this feeling of euphoria based on, this smells like my grandma's basement. This smells like something that is unique to you.
It would be a good wine.
Well, you know, it depends on the person. Well, or your grandpa, if you made a lot of wine, it smells like his barrel.
It tastes like grandma's sock. Taste this.
The sweaty gym sock is a fault.
So what about as far as the process for just the tasting itself from when you're putting it to your lips, like how does that go? What do you usually do in that case?
For me personally, I'll just kind of show you. Kind of drawing in air as I do that. That again tends to volatilize some of those aromas. And I'm kind of letting it lay across my tongue, trying to feel out all those tactile sensations. And then the big one for me is after the swallow, how long is that going to persist in your mouth? How long is that going to stay there? Will it come back? It tends to fill or round out. Is it, like we mentioned earlier, Riesling's one of my favorite grapes. It's laser line acidity typically, right straight to the center of your palate. It's very exciting for me. I like acid.
Acid and wine, not wine. Totally different.
I just thought of a new show, Cooking with Acid. You should do it.
Or Riesling cooking on acid. No, that'd be totally different. That's a bad rabbit.
Too progressive. But no, I mean, texturally, the acid changes the perception of where things move through your palate. There are some wines that are just more rich and more dense. Like if you take white wine examples, Riesling tends to be that more linear focused approach to wine that gives it very bright and refreshing, tends to be more citrus-based acidity there. And then you have Chardonnay, which is much more about texture, right? It's much more about hitting your palate and then moving to the cheeks and filling that out, rounding it out, and trying to build more of a creamy, more of a textural sensation there. So every wine is different, and that's why every wine is different better for different occasions, and every wine is great with specific food for a reason.
Well, that's been very helpful. And again, I think 70% of the population drinks wine, but how many percentage of it really knows how to do it properly? And that's why I wanted to do this with you, because I know you're a professional at this, and this will help everybody enjoy their wine.
Yeah,
especially Leonard Orsman.
I don't want to say it is drinking properly, but drinking with more of a sense of discovery and enjoyment of the process. Thinking about it a little bit more, taking your time with it. I don't think there's a wrong way to drink, but if I can just get you to slow down for 5 minutes and enjoy the thing that you're